Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives. As we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on it, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process. And it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we encourage you to do so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you from an email, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. The other option is you can join us live from most weekdays from 11 to noon Central Time. You can go to zoom.us and open a window and enter meeting ID number 853-2357-4173. That's 853-2357-4173. You can also call one of the many numbers that Zoom offers and then enter that meeting ID number. If you enter through the phone, you'll be automatically muted, and you can hit *6 to mute and unmute and toggle between those two. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody comments or has a question or offers to do a worksheet or some process, because that makes it far, far easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service. And that's just a whole heck of a lot easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. So, plenty of time for comments, questions, discussion today. I did present a couple of readings yesterday related to the blindness our culture has developed to the patriarchal power structure and the assumption of universal rules that are just all made up, and how much better we can be if we move into direct observation of these dynamics, and that gives us a way to actually change some of the factors that create it, and hopefully change things in such a way that we prefer the results. And there are lots of ways in which, as human beings, we are somewhat conditioned to resist change. And yet, as Guy Finley points out, change is a part of life. And once we get essentially dragged kicking and screaming out of our comfort zone into what life has to offer us next, then, screaming, wailing, gnashing teeth, we don't want this relationship to end, we don't want that job to end, we don't want to have to move here, we don't want this political party to be in power, etc. And eventually we wake up and realize, oh, wait a minute, this is better. Now that I'm out of that abusive relationship, I can see that it was abusive. I wasn't tracking that when I was in the middle of the relationship. Oh my gosh, I never realized how much I really didn't like going to work every day, and now that I'm not working there, I've got my resume out to several places where I would be thrilled to work. It's that kind of a situation that, even though most of us don't observe it, it's happening all the time. And Guy Finley, in one of his talks, he says, we get dragged kicking and screaming into something that's better for us. And as soon as we're there, we wake up and we think we're the expert on all things change. And we want to start lecturing other people about how important it is to be flexible and to be willing to go with the flow of life, etc. And there's a goofiness in the system. And the more we're actively able to see that goofiness or that misalignment, right, that distorting perceptual framework, the more we're able to see it, the more we can actually do something about it. And that's what we're hoping that these internet shows and support groups are leading to people ushering themselves into a very different type of experience of life. And it's the kind of thing that only you can do, and it's the kind of thing that we hope you do soon and often, because for the most part, most of the suffering that's happening on this planet, not the pain, not the physical pain, but the suffering layered on top of it, isn't necessary. As most people find out, the longer they work with different tools and different models of understanding their lives and the dynamics that drive their lives. So, in lieu of anyone speaking up, I will return the reading to Guy Finley's latest book. We're working our way through it. We've got just the littlest bit left. We're probably 7/8 of the way through it. His book, co-written with Dr. Ellen Dickstein, is titled The Book of One Love, One Life, One Journey. And I'm double checking to make sure people haven't unmuted. I'm hoping that my system is set up so that I will be able to hear. Just take a minute to double check my system. All right. So please feel free to unmute and speak up if something strikes you or you have a question or a comment, even if I seem to be in the middle of reading. This next section is titled, Embark on the Endless Journey of Self-Discovery. And Guy Finley writes, it seems that most of us, to one degree or another, feel that we're missing something vital in our life. You know the old saw, quote, "There has to be more to life than this," close quotes. Meaning that more to what our everyday experiences provide. For those who dare, trying to solve this feeling has set us on a great journey into a profound mystery. And even though we may feel the call to discover, if not free ourselves from this almost constant kind of discontent, it's hard to know where to begin, or perhaps we have begun, but we didn't know how to proceed. And even more, sometimes we feel like we're the only one who has these strange stirrings of discontent with how things are. Other people we know never seem to question anything. To them, the constant solution means to struggle for and win more money, more recognition from the world around them, and they've surrounded themselves with people and things to help them achieve that end. Well, that's all well and fine for those who seem to find in the world what we cannot. But where are we to look when no small part of our discontent is because, to whatever extent this is true for you, we've pretty much expired all known places that this world has to offer and only come up empty? And if we're to find this piece of our life that seems to be missing, where are we to search for it? The Bhagavad Gita is quoted as saying, "Higher, deeper, innermost abides another life." And the Rumi quote, "There is a force within that gives you life. Seek that. In your body there lies a precious jewel. Seek that. O wandering Sufi, if you are in search of the greatest treasure, don't look outside, look within, and seek that." Rumi, 1207 to 1273. Guy Finley writes, "Some of the most interesting people throughout history have shared these same feelings, and fortunately for us, their discoveries can help us find our way. And one consistent message that they all pass along can sometimes be a bitter pill to swallow. Why is that? Because we're told that what we are looking for can only be found within who and what we are in every passing moment, including those moments that are the most unwanted moments of all. And how the heck can that be?" Returning once again to the words of the great philosopher Epictetus that we looked into 2 sections back, we get our first glimpse. Quote, "There is only one thing for which God sent me into this world, and that is to perfect my nature in all sorts of virtue and strength. And there is no thing that I cannot use for this purpose." Close quotes. Guy Finley writes, "There do come to us in our lives, for 1,000 different reasons, certain conditions that challenge the very fabric of our being. Certainly, none of us would think to ourselves, 'Gee, I wish upon myself these difficult circumstances.' And yet, the truth is, through and because of these same unwanted moments that we are granted the opportunity to meet parts of ourselves that would otherwise remain invisible for the extent of our physical existence. I have long thought of these challenging encounters with life as close encounters of the truthful kind, close quotes. And in many ways, they represent a certain point we must all reach in our continuing journey to discover our true nature, which is, by the way, the part of us that we sense is missing. In other words, our true nature is what we're not in touch with, and that's what we think is missing, and that's what we go out searching for, but it's an inside job." Guy Finley writes, we can find welcoming solace to these shocks that are meant to send us seeking a new understanding of who and what we are, and of what's asked of us to reach the new world within us. Plotinus is quoted here as saying, quote, I rejoice to hear your spirit has set sail, like the returning Ulysses, for its native land, that glorious, that only real country, the world of unseen truth. So I rejoice that your spirit has set sail, returning to its native land, the world of unseen truth. Guy Finley writes, what is the actual nature of these shocking moments when we see that whatever path we had walked up to that point can take us no further, or that it was never real at all? Let alone, what is it about them that could be used by us to cause us to rejoice? Well, allow me to share a few ideas with you about this strange and wonderful kind of spiritual goodness that seems to arrive wrapped in a wrathful way. It's good to know that nothing in this world, or nothing that we can imagine, is permanent. For in this understanding, we are liberated from attachments. Attachments to what? To relationships, possessions, and of course, our bodies. Which, in turn, this frees us from false dependency with all of its attending fear. He quotes Baruch Spinoza as saying, quote, to be what we are and to become what we are capable of becoming is the only aim of life, close quotes. Guy Finley writes, it's good to discover that who we have always taken or thought ourselves to be, whether it's images or imagined powers or thought structures, this is not who we really are. Even if it comes at the cost of having to lose the same without knowing what will replace it. These kinds of discoveries open the door to a relationship with what is true and everlasting about our eternal self, our essential self. He quotes Jean Guyon as saying, the soul needs to discover what is inside. The self-nature needs to see what it really is and what it is like, right to the very bottom, close quotes. Then he quotes Max Stirner as saying, quote, the man himself must become other than he was if he wants to comprehend truth. Must become as true as truth itself. Man himself must become as true as truth itself. Guy Finley writes, nothing is more valuable than being handed a set of limitations that produce, by their very presence, the necessity of releasing ourselves from our own painful demands that life be and do as we insist. In this way, we're introduced to the possibility of meeting life without wanting anything imagined from it, which is the same as being in relationship with a life that has no limits because we haven't created them through our unconscious desires. Now, what he's sneaking in there is saying that the limits we experience in life are self-produced. They're self-induced nonsense. They're sin. And they're directly created by us identifying with thought patterns and then trying to make the world fit those thought patterns. Guy Finley writes, this brings us to one important idea, that all our seeking to discover ourself is the active expression So all the seeking we do is really just the active expression of a higher indwelling divine order within us, of being. That higher divine being, that order of being within us, is seeking to realize its timeless nature in the context of this world of passing time. Discovering our true selves is a great adventure, and yet it requires dedication and consistent effort. If that sounds a bit daunting, don't ever be discouraged. The beauty of the process is that everything we need to follow it successfully is given to us every moment. The universe is set up to help us fulfill the greatest possibilities born into us. Every person we meet, every experience we have, provides an opportunity for us to see ourselves more clearly. It's showing us where we stand in our own way or where we can cause our own problems. However, those moments of self-awareness also show us there is more to us than what we see. And that part which is able to see what is wrong is already at a higher level, which means we always have the potential to be more frequently and consciously operating at a higher level. The inspiration we need to keep going shines brighter as we realize we are each always in exactly the right place at the right time to take the next step on our individual journey. This is our unique part in the one great journey that is the evolution of human consciousness. He quotes Ralph Waldo Emerson, quote, "We live in secession, in division, in parts, in particles. Meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one." Close quotes. Ralph Waldo Emerson, 1803 to 1882. Guy Finley writes, "You and I, each and all of us, are expressions, reflections, and instruments of this supernal consciousness. In many ways, we are pure potential, seeking to realize its own greatest possibility. And all the things we do in pursuit of this discovery are so that we can, little by little, learn a bit more about the nature of this true self and about our relationship to it. Have you not seen that you start down the road to something because there's a longing? It seems that I'm just pursuing this, I just want that, but what I really want is to learn something new about my own higher potential. And that includes, by necessity, discovering what are my limitations. If there are limitations, I want to know what this nature is as well, because hasn't every one of us, every single one of us at some point entered into something and found, as we were going through it, that through that man, through that woman, that job, that craft, that art, whatever it is, through that, I was revealed to myself in a way that I didn't know before. So we set out to discover what is true and what is not true about ourselves, because each and every time we learn something new about ourselves, we are, in a manner of speaking, reborn. Revelation is integration. And this level of integration amounts to ceaseless self-realization. We've all had these aha moments that sound like, wow, I didn't know that about myself, or I didn't know I had the capacity to see things that way, or I didn't know I could feel things that deeply, or, oh my, I didn't know there was that much anger and fear living in me. So that whether it's understood or not at this point, everything we do is to answer this innate longing to discover the truth of ourselves in whatever shape or form that revelation takes. And what a grand mystery it is how this capital S self, quote, uses, close quotes, every one of us for the ground of a discovery that can't take place any other way than through this unique convergence of who and what we are and when we came into this world. Nothing can sound out what you sound out or experience life the way you do. Each of us has been given an immeasurable gift, a specific role to play in a celestial story so great, so vast, it can hardly be seen. And further, as our eyes open and we realize the truth of this invisible prize, not only do we claim our own grand possibilities, but we also help everyone else do the same. There's that wisdom that cuts across all these different disciplines. Way of Mastery, Course in Miracles. When you heal, you're never healed alone. Or Course in Miracles saying, 1,000,000 yet unborn will benefit from the work you do here today. Seeing life as it is and asking life as it is to teach me about myself and about it is a far more productive way to engage life than to think, I know what should be happening here. It's mind-boggling to me how much there is to keep track of, how fast things change in terms of the technologies, in terms of the devices. I mean, I saw a thing the other day where there's a 2 terabyte solid-state drive you can get for the back of your phone that, wirelessly transfers at a certain ridiculously high rate of data transfer, or a wired transfer that's off the charts. But 2 terabytes in the size of something that looks like it's about the size of 2 or 3 silver dollars flattened out. It's just ridiculously small. And the software that people write to interact with that, and the way that software interacts and integrates with so many other pieces of software, it boggles my mind. And this is a tiny little bit of the technology that many of the things that I do day in and day out are based on. So the rate at which things are changing and how difficult my conscious logical mind has trying to keep it all straight, that alone ought to wake me up to the fact that I don't have a clue about how life should be unfolding. And so however it does unfold, I'm going to be better off if I just accept that as a gift and start asking to be taught how to interact with it in a way that benefits me and those around me. Now, at another level, you might say, well, this is like learning to tune myself to the energies that can teach me about life, or that can teach me about, as this most recent section is talking about, my true self, my higher self, my inner wisdom, etc. So, once again, we're at about the halfway mark in our first hour here. Just want to mention we welcome comments and questions. Even refutations if you want to refute something that's being suggested. The next section is titled Preparation for Perfect Happiness. And Guy Finley writes, we all wish to be filled with wisdom, with peace, and with compassion. But what are we actually filled with most of the time? Our minds spill over with reruns from unwanted moments that had been in the past, memories of painful encounters with other people, fears of an uncertain future, meaningless thoughts about meaningless events clog our consciousness, leaving virtually no room in our heart for what we profess matters most to us. And with all of this self-fulfilling, there's virtually no space left within us for anything new to come in. As the New Testament tells us, quote, there is no room at the inn, close quotes. The great teachings of the ages tell us that we have to empty ourselves of useless thoughts and self-pictures or imagined situations before the higher help that's waiting to join our consciousness before it can enter into us. We don't really have to do anything to gain wisdom. We just have to empty ourselves, and the wisdom will be there for us. Here are some beautiful quotes from scriptures across time that share this transformational lesson with us. The Tao Te Ching, circa 600 BC, is quoted as saying, quote, whoso bendeth himself shall be straightened. Whoso emptieth himself shall be filled. Whoso weareth himself away shall be renewed. Whoso humbleth himself shall be exalted. Whoso exalteth himself shall be abased. Therefore doth the sage cling to simplicity. And then Philokalia is quoted as saying, quote, because every thought enters the heart in the form of a mental image of some sensible object, the blessed light of the divine will illumine the heart only when it is completely empty of everything. And so, free from form and from all form is something when it's been completely emptied of everything. Indeed, this light reveals itself to be pure intellect in the measure to which the intellect is purged of all concepts. So your pure intellect is not, as the Way of Mastery talks about, shoved full of trivialities. For us, most of the time these days, because we've been raised with language and culture, our intellect is shoved full of trivialities. And that's why the Way of Mastery talks about letting go of the intellect as your primary user interface with life and use the awakened heart as your primary user interface. But the idea is, this brings up the thought about the Way of Mastery introducing us to the concept of our divine ignorance. Empty, open, wide open, ignorant, not judging, not even actively labeling what's being, what's hitting the senses, just staying in as wide open and questioning a space as I can manage. And as I practice it, as we were talking about yesterday and Friday, that there's really good research in books like It's Deeper Than That and The Awakened Brain. There's really good research about how when we practice these things, it actually strengthens physiological components in our energy system that make it easier for us to do it the next time and the next time and the next time. It begins with emptying myself. It begins with learning that any time there's a tightness or a tension or an upset inside of me, whatever my mind is telling me about what's causing that is a lie. It's at best only partially true. And then he quotes Mahmud Shah Bistari. Apologies for mangling that name, but he was from 1288 to 1340, and the quote is, quote, go sweep out the chamber of your heart. Make it ready to be the dwelling place of the beloved, capital B. When you depart out, he will enter it. In you, void of yourself, will he display his beauties. So you gotta come empty-handed. You've gotta come open and questioning rather than knowing. Then he quotes Brother Lawrence as saying, quote, I know that for the right practice of it, which is, quote, in parentheses, he calls his practice the presence of the Lord, close parentheses. I know that for the right practice of it, the heart must be empty of all other things, because the Creator, God, will possess the heart alone. And as he cannot possess it alone without emptying it, so neither can he act there and do in it what he pleases, unless it is left vacant to him. Brother Lawrence, circa 1640 to 1691. And then Eileen Caddy is quoted as saying, quote, be surprised at nothing. Let peace and stillness flood through you and envelop you completely in its cloak. Put on the whole armor of love, and yet feel very deeply. Let tears flow, washing away impurities, until you feel clean within and clean without. Become like an empty vessel ready to be filled with life's nectar. Throughout time, the great sages, that's a close that quote from Eileen Caddy. And then Guy Finley writes, throughout time, the great sages have told us we hurt ourselves in our efforts to save ourselves. We fill ourselves with nonsense, hoping to buffer ourselves from the pain of life. But our buffers are our pain. To let go and empty ourselves of all these distractions and misguided protections is the way to prepare ourselves to receive life's greatest gift. And then it seems like here's a poem from Guy Finley. Life will fill whatever you empty, and whatever you fill, life will empty. That's the code, the hidden conduct of contentment, wrapped in a mystery, filled with contradiction. No sense in trying to save yourself by holding out. Nothing you have held on to has filled the hole, has it? Then be hollow. Let the winds of change play with you instead of punish you. Give it away. Use it up. Offer it to the wind. And then jump in. So that whole thing brings to mind listening to language experts like Dale Allen Hoffman talk about the Beatitudes and say that in the first Beatitude where it says, blessed are the poor in spirit, the word poor might have been one little dot on the paper away from the word home, or it might have been use of the word poor referring to empty and wide open rather than without resources. So, in our language, if we say someone's really poor, we tend to think in terms of that they are lacking things, whereas the concept of poor from the ancient Aramaic that's more relevant to this first beatitude is, blessed are those who are wide open and empty and have their home in their spiritual life, rather than blessed are those who are poor in spirit. So Guy Finley, we've only got a few pages left here in his book. I don't know if we'll get through it today, but the next section is titled Paradise Lost. Find yourself and discover unimaginable delight. Guy Finley writes, We witness almost daily a chain of shocking events involving both war and personal tragedy. Why do so many of us fight? How on earth, as it often comes to pass, can we be so discontented with our life that we literally hate it? In large part, it comes down to a misperception about what it takes to be happy. People fight because they have an idea of what they need to be happy. That puts them in competition with others for the desired resource. Or they feel they must be supported in their beliefs, and they demand that others do it in their way or else. And people hate their own lives when they believe that they can't get what they need to be happy, or if in spite of all they do acquire, nothing seems to take away the pain. However, when we look at what the wise ones through the ages tell us about happiness, we find again and again that there is only one thing that leads to true happiness. And it has nothing to do with what one gets or one doesn't get in the world. It has nothing to do with what anyone else does or doesn't do, has or hasn't done, does or doesn't have. The secret to true happiness is self-knowledge. Here are some examples of what the great ones tell us. Marcus Aurelius is quoted, quote, "Those who do not observe the movements of their own minds must of necessity be unhappy," close quotes. And then he quotes St. Augustine of Hippo, "It is right for us to be extorted so to love wisdom that we most eagerly seek it as our treasure, acquire more and more of it, suffer many trials, restrain our desires, ponder the future so that we may preserve innocence and beneficence. Whenever we act in this way, we are in possession of true virtues, because our objective is true, that it is in harmony with our true nature in reference to salvation and true happiness." And then he quotes Ramana Maharishi, quote, "Nearly all mankind is more or less unhappy because nearly all do not know the true, capital S, self. Real happiness abides in, capital S, self-knowledge and self-knowledge alone. All else is fleeting. To know one's true self is to be blissful always." Ramana Maharishi. Guy Finley writes, "To be sure, and let's be quite clear about this, there is nothing wrong with desiring financial independence or succeeding in creating something meaningful in life. And yet ultimately, what this kind of happiness brings isn't what we really want. What we really want is freedom from a self that torments us each time it compares itself to others, or it imagines that it can be happier if we have this or that possession. Truth be known, these people are possessed by a kind of spirit that can never be satisfied, as evidenced by the fact that there's no end to their appetite for more. In this cycle of seed and greed, the great journey to incorruptible happiness starts elsewhere. Seek first the freedom from fear, and find there, in this interior liberty, the lasting fulfillment that only capital T truth can give. Then, in this new richness, you'll be able to do in life what it is you really want to do, and without doubt be successful there because you have first succeeded as a human being." He quotes J. Krishnamurti as saying, "Happiness does not come into being when you seek it. It is a byproduct. It comes into being when there is goodness, when there is love, when there is no ambition, when the mind is quietly seeking out what is true." This whole thing about when there is no ambition, in my mind, as Krishnamurti talks about that, that's exactly the opposite. In my mind, Dr. Michael Ryce suggesting we cancel any goal. And any time I'm not sitting in perfect contentment, I want to cancel any goal. And then I just want to ask to be shown. This is the other part of Dr. Michael Ryce's work. When the mind is quietly seeking out what is true, I'm asking to be taught what is true. The quiet seeking is not the fevered overturning every rock and hunting behind every bush. It's just this childlike curiosity. Then he quotes Thomas Merton, quote, "Therefore, there is only one problem on which all my existence, my peace, and my happiness depend: to discover myself in discovering God, or my Creator. If I find, capital H, Him, God, I will find myself. And if I find myself, my true self, I will find Him." Thomas Merton. Guy Finley wraps it up by saying, "To know ourselves deeply is to understand the universe and our place in it. Through that knowledge comes unconditional happiness, happiness that is not based on any other condition. Then we can know forbearance, compassion, and the beautiful truth that, quote, all things good come to those for whom the good is all things." It's one of my favorite Guy Finley quotes. All good things come to those for whom the good is all things. In other words, for anybody who learns to live life in wide open acceptance and living in the question and asking to be taught by life, rather than trying to impress upon life its need to comply with my 9-bit mind's thoughts, with my cravings and my dissatisfactions. So, that's my offering for today. There's a couple more sections to finish off the book, but rather than rush through that, I'm going to leave that for today and invite comments or questions or suggested topics for tonight's support group, which will happen from 6:30 to 9 tonight. It's a Tuesday, so we're going to have a support group, and everything you would need to be able to join us is available on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. And if you're going to go there and look that up, please try to remember that there's a separate login info page for Tuesday and a separate one for Thursday. And it's absolutely free. You just go to Zoom and enter the proper meeting ID number, and we'd be happy to have you join us. It is always a more the merrier situation. So either join us yourself or pass the information along to somebody you think would benefit. We will have some of our regulars won't be there. They have other activities, so it might be a good time for you to come and have a smaller audience and maybe ask your questions or get a worksheet done, because it would probably be a lower attendance than normal based on what I've been hearing from people for today. And we have plenty of time. Yes?
I have a question that sort of dovetails in a funny way. Months ago, I was down visiting my daughter and her husband, and they were watching some show that had commercials. It was a big TV screen. And I swear to God, I didn't understand what was being said in the commercials. And I said to them, what's going on? Is it me? I don't understand. And she said, Mom, these ads are designed for younger people, and they have a whole different culture. These aren't meant for you to even be watching, but if you're watching, you're not among the audience that they're addressing. And I thought, well, okay, I can accept that, but why don't I even understand it? And she said, it's a whole different language. It's a different culture. There are things that you might call in-jokes, but that generation, that's just how they talk. And I said to her, do you understand them? And she said, yeah, but I can see why you wouldn't. And so all of the things you've been reading about allowing, observing, accepting, I put that in that category because I remember when I was small being critical of one grandfather, particularly, who was very stiff. Of course, I'm thinking about stiffness these days. And I was critical of him because he couldn't do somersaults and handstands and climb trees. And I thought, what's the matter with you? I didn't have any concept of what his life might be like from inside himself. I thought he had some kind of control over that.
Right.
And so it's just been a revelation to me that part of finding out who you are is that you'll never find out, because who you are changes according to the culture that you're looking at and comparing yourself with. Like, I'm no longer a person, not only who can do handstands and stuff, but I can't understand what seems to be perfectly understandable language out there now. Somehow this sort of, I was thinking about this as you were reading, and I'm not sure why that popped up into mind. Maybe you can do the connection point, because accepting the self, who is this self? This self is sort of self-limited on the level that I'm thinking of it is on.
Yeah. Also, the self has been programmed in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the tie-in for me is I have my brother recently sent me a picture of me at about maybe 2 years old, maybe 3, kneeling in front of a little black and white TV, wearing Mickey Mouse ears. Remember the little felt cap with the Mickey Mouse ears? Plastic?
I do. Yep.
And when I see that picture, I flash back to think, even though I had a really good family and we were not allowed to just sit in front of the TV, as a matter of fact, when it first came out, there was nothing to watch.
Right.
For big chunks of hours of the day, right? There were just a few shows on the evening, and then eventually daytime TV came on. But I was just thinking about the incredible programming impact of the TV in my life.
Yeah.
And then I flashed to the idea of cell phones and tablets and connection. It's an entirely different programming, but it is a programming. We are taught by our culture who we should be. And these deeper spiritual teachings are all inviting us to lay that down and walk out naked into the field to discover who we really are. And what we really are and what our potential is. And that cannot happen if I'm taking an intellectual approach to it. Cannot happen. Why? Because of the stuff we're just reading. My intellect is full. It's jam-packed full of stuff. Thoughts about itself and how it should be, how other people should relate to it, how people should talk to it. My sense of self is far bigger and more convoluted than I have any awareness of until it gets challenged. And then I start to think, wait a minute, I know what's right here, and I know that's not right, and that shouldn't be happening, and here's how they should be talking to me or treating me or relating to me. So that's the tie-in I see, is that you're at a place in life where what they're putting on the TV and on the internet these days is geared up to get into the mind of people who've been raised with a screen in front of their face. And your intellect hasn't been raised that way. So even though you've got a massive sense of self and all those, self-defining thoughts, it's not as intense as people who were, 20, 30, 40 years old. Do you remember the question, do you remember the first time you turned on a computer?
No, what's the question? I might remember.
That's the question. The question, which is a very telling question. It isn't so telling anymore because, but it used to be that you could be dealing with somebody who was 20 or 30 or 40 years old, and you wouldn't know how old they were. But if you asked them that question, it could tell you.
Yeah.
Because only significantly older people remember the novelty of a computer and when they took possession and when they turned it on. My kids, who are in their late 30s now, they don't remember because they were in grade school, low grade school, when we got our first computer in the house.
Yeah.
So it's always been a part of their life. Or I should say their programming.
Yeah.
Or their sense of what they need. So that's all I can say about that right now. My mind has gone blank.
That's okay. It's mind-boggling.
But I love that last segment where he's talking about emptying yourself, just coming wide open and asking to be filled up rather than coming from the knowledge. I know, and I know I'm right, and this is wrong, and my righteous indignation is my. Well, as we talked about so often, the core of this work for me boils down to every time I'm upset at any level, whatever my mind is telling me about why I'm upset is a lie. At least it's predominantly wrong. There might be a kernel of truth in it, but it can't be honest if my mind wants to use it to distract me from how I'm actually creating my pain.
Yeah, it's as if the culture is inviting us to not know, which is a great gift.
Exactly. The culture is based around distractions. And Michael Ryce talks about it quite frequently. He says, the system is designed to create and maintain really good consumers of whatever the system is selling.
Yeah.
But imagine what would happen to our economy if we had a magic wand we could wave and everybody was content, absolutely content with whatever they possessed right now, and all they would need going forward is some fresh air, some fresh water, some nutrition. That's all that would be needed. So imagine what would happen to the economy. It would absolutely implode because people wouldn't be scrolling and clicking and ordering all day long like they do. I mean, if we just slow down and turn the focus inside and ask to be taught, there is so much to discover about your own capacity for compassion, for love, for patience, for civility, for respect, for extending your true nature. There's so much capacity for you to learn about if you slow down and turn inside. The problem is you have to get past all the garbage that you've stored in there as negative thoughts about how you're not good enough, and you're not pretty enough, and you're not sexy enough, and you're not smart enough. None of which is true, by the way, but you've got to get past that. You've got to see it, feel it, and see the false nature of it before you let go of it. It's just the way things are set up, unfortunately, or fortunately, it's just the way it is. So, you've done it again. Thank you for taking us all the way to the end of our time. It's delightful, as always, to talk to you. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And just by the way, I've been observing lately that every single time things don't work out the way I think they should, they always work out better than I ever thought they could. Blessings.